following program contains explicit calls to political action. If you are addicted to the tax-exempt status, Randall might not be right for you. Check with your little sister.
Hung between earth and heaven, Son of God, God the Son, holy man and holy God, the Holy One.
Standing for truth in the four corners of America. Fighting for justice on the frontiers of the culture wars. And turning resistance into an art form. Randall Terry.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Our brothers and sisters in Egypt are suffering. The Muslim Brotherhood is on the ropes, and there is an uprising against them in Egypt. And Saudi Arabia is ponying up billions of dollars to keep the current government in Egypt in power, leaving hundreds and hundreds of people dead. We're going to talk about it on today's show.
It's time now for Down Home with Granny Jihad.
Lotta grappa! Children, come close and listen. I heard Muhammad saying, during the last days there will appear some young foolish people who will say the best words, but their faith will not go beyond their throats. Fake Muslims. And they will go out from their religion like an arrow goes out of the game. So, wherever you find them, kill them. For whoever kills them shall have reward on the day of resurrection. Don't change religion, otherwise Granny kill you.
Welcome to today's program, friend. I am going to focus on what is happening in Egypt. And we're going to look at history, we're going to look at theology, we're going to look at violence, we're going to look at some of the players, we're going to look at some of the bizarre and almost criminally negligent reporting by some members of the media. I'm looking at the LA Times. I'm going to read to you a quote. The LA Times says, many Islamists blame minority Christians for opposing Morsi and backing the July 3 military takeover of the country. Christians, who make up about 10% of Egypt's population of 83 million, have lived in relative peace with Muslims for centuries. Let that set the stage for you. As of the day that this show is being recorded, there have been over 60 churches bombed, burned, desecrated, bullets fired into the building or at the building. And this sudden wave of violence against Christians is nothing new. We should grieve the loss of life. As of right now, somewhere between 900 and 1,400 civilians have been killed in the clashes led by the Muslim Brotherhood, who are trying to get Morsi back into power. 100 policemen have died. And right now there is absolutely no end in sight. But one of the sub-stories that is literally centuries old are that our Christian brothers and sisters, the Coptic Christians, are suffering and have been suffering for nearly 1,400 years at the hands of Muslims. And what you have to understand, and what I have never seen anyone at CNN or Fox or ABC, CBS, any of them, I've never seen any of them report, is that the persecution of Coptic Christians in Egypt began with Muhammad himself. In case you did not know it, Muhammad sent a personal letter to the leader of the Copts, C-O-P-T-S, saying that he, Muhammad, was the true prophet, and that if he, the Coptic king, wanted to preserve his throne and his honor and his people, that he would convert to Islam. But if not, Muhammad threatened him and said, the disaster to befall you and your people is all yours. The blame goes to you. And with that letter from Muhammad himself began a multi-century persecution, horrific bloodshed, the literal imprisonment of Christians inside the border of Egypt. St. George's Church in Cairo. I've been there. It's just a beautiful place. The implements that were used to martyr the original St. George, the Roman soldier, are actually there. Okay? You can see how our brother was martyred. Gunmen drove by St. George's, firing bullets, spraying or throwing Molotov cocktails. The Christians there called the police. No one showed up for 3 hours. For 3 hours. Nuns were recently harassed, physically harassed by Muslim terrorists. The violence has no end in sight, but the violence that has been happening for 1,400 years is being grossly ignored. And for the LA Times to say that they have lived in relative peace is an affront to common sense, and it's an absurdity. If there's been any peace whatsoever, it's been the peace of slavery. One could say that the black people lived in relative peace with their owners for over 100 years in the South. It's the peace that comes from surrender. And by the way, one dear man is standing out in front of St. George's Church, had not slept when he did the interview at the LA Times, had not slept for 3 days. He's standing guard, him and some of the Christian brothers in the church, and guess what they have? Clubs. Because Christians aren't allowed to have firearms. You want to talk about another subplot? What happens when you get disarmed? You can't defend yourself. So, I'm going to take a break. We will talk about the Muslim Brotherhood, why it could and should be labeled as a terrorist organization. Why has Saudi Arabia basically said it will spend any amount of money necessary to keep the Muslim Brotherhood out of power and keep the current government in power? Why is the Muslim Brotherhood hated by fellow Muslims who are in current governments in the Middle East? We'll talk about this and much more. We'll do a timeline of what has happened, and hopefully you will leave a more knowledgeable person on what's happening in Egypt. Don't go away. My wife and I, for 5 years, have been grinding our own wheat and baking our own bread from scratch. Within 2 hours, you can have fresh wheat in your hand and then piping hot bread come out of the oven. The most nutritious and delicious bread you will ever have. And we do it for under $1 a loaf. Call Paula's Bread and find out about this grain mill and the mixer and how it can save you money and change your life. How would you like to be able to reach hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of potential customers with your product or your company or your web-based business? Well, you can do that right here on this show. Every single day, we get phone calls or letters or orders online from states all over the country where people are watching this television show. Right now, we are seen in 45 cities at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time every night, and then a rerun again at 12:30 midnight. You can reach them using this show at advertising rates that are so inexpensive, it would blow your mind. So, if you're interested, contact us at the phone number that you see on the screen or the email address, and we can talk about how you can grow your business and help support this show. Welcome back, friend. You may remember Kristallnacht. It was the night where Hitler's henchmen told the brown shirts and angry young thugs that were involved with the Nazi Party that they could deliberately seek out Jewish businesses, smash their windows, the night of broken glass, smash their windows, loot the stores, physically harass, sometimes murder the Jewish merchants. Muslims are now going through the streets of Cairo and other cities and are putting graffiti on the Christian-owned businesses. So you see with this image, the cross, the Coptic cross, and then the line through it. That's saying to people, don't shop here. Moreover, it then targets that building. If vandals, looters, violent thugs want to come later on. Now why is this happening? Why, when the Muslim Brotherhood's political power is in a great level of tatters right now in Egypt, why this? The Muslim Brotherhood, founded in 1928 by Hassan al-Banna, is committed to three basic things, all right? And you have to understand this. If you understand what I'm going to tell you, you can get to the core of who the Muslim Brotherhood is and why it is and has become a terrorist organization, and why all modern Islamic, Sunni Islamic terrorism, all of it, finds its taproot in the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood wants three main political things. Number one political body, okay? One huge Islamic nation, basically the remnants of the Ottoman Empire, okay? Up until the defeat of the Ottoman Empire at the end of World War I, there was always one political body, okay? And number two, there was one caliph. There were a few moments in history where there were competing caliphs and where there were petty lords over various eras. But the philosophical and political theory that existed was that there is one ummah, one people. So the Muslim Brotherhood says we want to return to one people. Number two, we want one caliph, one successor to Muhammad, one political leader. And number three, we want Sharia law. Now I'm going to start with the Sharia law one, then we're going to talk about the other two. Sharia law, by definition, means that Christianity is, as it is supposed to be practiced, explained in the Gospel, the book of Acts, and then the letters of the New Testament, that Christianity is outlawed, okay? It is enslaved, and the true practice of Christianity under Sharia law is banned. The church exists to evangelize, to herald that Jesus Christ is Lord. He is the Son of God. He died for our sins. He rose from the dead. He ascended into heaven. He will come again in glory to judge the living and the dead. That is the first mission of the church, okay? That mission is illegal under Sharia law. If you're a Christian, you're not allowed to preach in Saudi Arabia or Pakistan or Afghanistan or Egypt. You're not allowed to stand in a street corner and say, Jesus of Nazareth is the Son of God. He is Lord. He is Savior. He is the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. Those very words are a criminal act under Sharia law. Are you hearing me? Because Muhammad said that Jesus was not the Son of God. He is not the Savior of the world. That he is not God in the flesh. And that Christians are polytheists. That we believe in many gods. He was so ignorant in his understanding of the Trinity that he believed that Christians were polytheists. And the proclamation of polytheism and the proclamation of the deity and divinity of Christ and that he is the only begotten Son of God is a criminal act. So the very first role of the church to evangelize is against the law. So the Muslim Brotherhood wants to harm Christianity because it believes in Sharia law. I've got to take a break. Why would Saudi Arabia pony up $12 billion to this current Egyptian interim government? I'll tell you why when we come back. Do you want to have knowledge, wisdom, discernment? If so, you have to read good books, theology, history, books that look at the lives of great men and women. So to help you to become a more effective Christian, a better witness for truth, somebody who can engage in productive conversation that exhorts and edifies those that you speak with, we're going to do something crazy. We're offering you these 7 books for a gift of any size. You just pay for the shipping and handling, and then give whatever gift that you can, and we will send them to you. But just to make it a little bit more crazy, I will send you a second copy of my 3 books, autographed. You can give them as a gift to your pastor or to a family member and help extend truth and justice in the world. This is while supplies last. Welcome back. It is confusing at first blush to us to think of fellow Muslims, fellow Sunni Muslims, fighting each other. Doesn't it seem a little confusing to you? Why would Saudi Arabia say it will do whatever it takes financially to keep the current government in power? I mean, there is an argument to be made that Morsi was elected by a majority, legitimately elected president, and that the Muslim Brotherhood kept winning seats in the lower house, the upper house, and that now there is an overthrow of a legitimately elected government, right? There is an argument to be made there. There's also an argument to be made of, wow, this Muslim Brotherhood really worked hard. They work within the process, right? And then Saudi Arabia steps up and says, we will do everything we can to crush the Muslim Brotherhood. Why? Let me tell you why. It's point 1 and point 2 of the Muslim Brotherhood's goals. Okay, Sharia law exists pretty intensely in Saudi Arabia. Their constitution says that our laws are based upon Sharia law and the history of Muhammad's life, the Sunnah, the Hadith, okay? And they're doing it with one significant disagreement. The House of Saud, the royal family of Saud, does not want one caliph. It doesn't want to surrender its geographical borders. And the Muslim Brotherhood's goals inherently require that the House of Saud, the royal family, be obliterated. That's why the House of Saud is committed to suppressing the Muslim Brotherhood. Because they know that the Muslim Brotherhood is committed to the overthrow of the Saudi family. The Muslim Brotherhood is ultimately committed to the overthrow of every single current Muslim government in the world so that there can be one united government and one supreme leader. Okay? Now, thank you. Let's talk about Osama bin Laden for a minute. Osama bin Laden came from the bin Laden family in Saudi Arabia, very wealthy. He was devout. And at the beginning of his public work, he actually corresponded with some of the higher level imams and clerics in Saudi Arabia, okay? And what made him snap and to become a terrorist, he would have called himself a loyal jihadist, faithful to Muhammad. What made him snap was when the Americans and other Western powers were allowed to have military bases inside of Saudi Arabia to fight against Iraq, to get Iraq out of Kuwait. Remember 1991? Iraq won, as we call it? Well, in Sharia law, it is expressly forbidden to help infidels to fight against fellow Muslims. And also, those pagans, those infidels, you know, the Christian Marines and army people, guess what they came to Saudi Arabia with, which really enraged bin Laden? I'll tell you when I come back. Do you want to get America out of the hands of wicked and unjust men and women who are destroying the republic before our eyes, and put leadership back into the hands of righteous men and women so that we don't die as a nation? Well, you're talking about social revolution, and there are rules in social revolution. We can look at the victorious social revolutions of the past, such as the end of slavery, the end of child labor, women's voting rights, the end of segregation, and so much more, and learn from their victories. Look at their actions, their images, their rhetoric, their sacrifices, and their final fruit. We will send you this series that originally cost $129, 7 books for students, 1 teacher's guide, if you'll give a gift of any size and just pay for shipping and handling. Take advantage of it today. Welcome back, friend. What was it that so enraged Osama bin Laden that it helped push him to becoming a terrorist? Religious jewelry, icons, military men wearing a crucifix, showing their Bibles publicly, having religious services on base. It's against Sharia law. Muhammad said, leave only one religion on the Arabian Peninsula. The Saudi crown has repeatedly said, until recently, we have a simple law. There is no church in Saudi Arabia. There will never be a church in Saudi Arabia. But Osama bin Laden reasoned that the display of Christian iconography, Christian symbols, was against Muhammad's commandment, and that they brought in these infidel Christians to fight against fellow Muslims in Kuwait and in Iraq. And so at that point, Osama bin Laden came to the conclusion that the Muslim Brotherhood has come to since its very beginning. Namely, that these so-called Muslim governments are, in fact, illegitimate. Because while they say that they support Sharia law or elements of Sharia law, the very foundation of Sharia law, that there is one people, one leader, one law, all of the current Islamic governments betray. They betray that element. Now, the Muslim Brotherhood got its beginnings in Egypt. And by the way, I'm running out of time in today's show. We're going to do a timeline of the current hostilities in tomorrow's program. And I want to invite you to go to our website and watch the Muslim Brotherhood series. If you want to send a contribution of any size, we will actually send you on one DVD the 9-part series, the special that we recently recorded concerning the Muslim Brotherhood. And I think it's safe to say that you will learn more from that television series about the Muslim Brotherhood than anything that has been shown in the last year on television in America, anywhere that we know of. You be the judge. You can have it for a contribution of any size. You pay the shipping and handling, we'll send it to you. In 1948, the Muslim Brotherhood assassinated the Prime Minister of Egypt, Mahmoud Fahmy al-Nagrashi. And that was when the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood, Hassan al-Banna, was alive. Hassan al-Banna had already started a secret apparatus, he called it, which was a terrorist, military, paramilitary wing. And they were responsible for the assassination of this group, or of this man rather, the Prime Minister. Very shortly thereafter, the government assassinated Hassan al-Banna and tried to crush the Muslim Brotherhood. There's a lot in the press right now that the Egyptian authorities are trying to crush the Muslim Brotherhood. It's not going to happen. They only have 5 men per cell. They could be disrupted a little bit. But these are cell groups that are 5 people big. And they have hundreds of thousands of members who have all been trained to love Sharia law and to love the goals of Muhammad to conquer the earth with the sword. Friend, they might be down, might be wobbly a little bit. They're not going anywhere. This bloodshed is going to continue. See you tomorrow.